Okay, so I guess people are listening. So on this channel, I received a very long email about race and black people and what's black people's problems. And I guess, because I have a pro Second Amendment channel and I'm African American, kind of like, Coleon Noir, as I've said before, a pro black Second Amendment person gives a lot of people cognitive dissonance, both on the right and on the left, right? Because if you're on the left, you're not supposed to be pro gun, right? And if you're on the right, they assume that all black people are either not pro gun or that they're all thugs and shouldn't have guns anyway, and those are the people that we need to have gun control for, right? And then they'll usually point to, black inner city homicide statistics, and all that other stuff, right? So I'm not going to sit here and read the long, lengthy email, but in so many words, the email talks about the divisiveness in the country right now, black people, white people. Obama, he thinks Obama, created the racial tension that exists as opposed to the racial tension already being there, and, Bush, doing such a poor job and, the economy, being so bad when Obama first came in that you had a lot of people who, in my opinion, I feel like a lot of white people voted for Obama because it was kind of like their get rid of white guilt card, right? I voted for Obama. I voted for a black man. Okay, so hit the reset button on the Nintendo, and I don't want to hear about race anymore because the president, is black, even though it's a biracial man. The president is black, and so you niggas shut up and be silent. Okay, we don't hear nothing about race anymore. And then the whole Henry Louis Gates thing happened, and then Obama commented on that about, trying to get the white police officer who arrested Henry Louis Gates in his own house to apologize. And basically, the police officer, even after he was invited to the White House, told Obama to kick his ass or kiss his ass, not kick his ass, kiss his ass. Okay. And in my opinion, there is a level of white racial resentment, which is why Donald Trump got voted in office, among other things. Among other things, when I say white racial resentment, I mean the idea that white people are losing power in this country, that minorities are outproducing them. This is why you have all the gerrymandering, because white people don't want to be outvoted. You can go and you can look at the Jared Taylor conversations about, and I like Jared Taylor at times because Jared Taylor comes off to me. People will say, oh, he's a Nazi, he's a white supremacist, he's all that. I'm saying, in my opinion, a lot of white people carry that Jared Taylor-esque attitude, that white nationalist attitude with them in many regards. They may not be as extreme as he is, but they still kind of, feel the same way, right? Do white people want to become a minority? No. Do white people want to lose power at the collective level and not be in charge of things? No, they don't, right? And then this is where you get into the conversation where white people will usually point to, oh, well, look at Africa. Africa's, fucked up, and look at, other, places with Muslims or other minorities, and that, and only the only good minority are Asian people, right? And they'll come with, those sort of arguments, leaving out the context of history, leaving out, U.S. foreign affairs and the way that the U.S. has subverted other governments and democracies. All you got to do is watch movies like Charlie Wilson's War, and the fact that they tried to tell him, like, hey, maybe we should build a school, and, all I need is $2 million. And they said no. And then a couple years later, you got, Osama bin Laden, if you believe in Osama bin Laden and don't conspiracy theory it to death, flying, the planes into the buildings with 9/11, screaming Allahu Akbar. Okay. So I mean, there's a history to it, but your average white people do not know history. They don't care about history. So a lot of their anger and resentment really comes out of a narrow perspective. They don't even understand how power moves within the white community. Right? If you made all the minorities, all the black people, Mexicans, Muslims, you made everybody disappear that a lot of white people got a problem with, you would still be left with classism. You would still be left with the white elite males on Wall Street, and the big bankers and the corporations are making you debt slaves, and they don't want to pay you a livable wage, and they're screwing you over, and your mom's sick, and she doesn't have the health care to pay for her cancer treatment and everything else, and that's what it would be. They're not going to open up the coal mines anymore. They're shipping jobs overseas. Like it amazes me how you have so many white people who, they put so much faith in the very people who are screwing them over, and then they allow themselves to focus on, the scapegoats, and that being black people or whoever else, right? And I've checked black people about this. Where they go, and then black people, when they want to talk about white supremacy or the oppressor, they go and they focus on the poor working class white guy, and the middle manager, right? And I'm not saying that those people can't act as barriers, because a lot of times you get these poor working class white people, who like their only sense of positive identity is via the fact that they're white. Right? They kind of have this, well, at least I'm not a nigger, right? Like that's like their one up on the world, right? They don't have an education. They really feel inferior to like the white elite people who live in Manhattan, or, are wealthy, or the business owners and everything else. So they got to feel better than somebody else. They have to, there's a lot of white folks that they kind of use black people as the barometer. As long as they're doing better than black people, they kind of feel like, okay, well, things are okay, because relative to, black people or black communities that I live near, we still got a little bit more money than them. It's a sort of white fragility. It's a sort of inferiority complex that a lot of white folks don't want to be intellectually honest about. Talk to white men who don't have college degrees, and have them in a room with white men who do have college degrees. They feel some type of way about that. They feel some type of way about not being educated, and how they're viewed. And then what they do is they try to reduce everything down to hard work. It's all about hard work. I may not be smart, I may not be educated, but I'm a hard worker, and I work hard, right? And then see, this is where I end up having my problem with white folks. When they want to talk about hard work and, personal responsibility and everything, because what ends up, like, for black people, it's like this. A lot of today's black people, especially younger black people, they don't, they're like, okay, we watched our ancestors and the black people who came for us. Okay, like I said, when you go back to those, black and white photos of, Martin Luther King and the black people who were marching, do you see any sagging pants? Do you see any street culture? Like, these people look like they're getting ready to go to church. The black people dressed exactly the same as white people. They were trying to be accepted by white society. And all white society did was give them the illusion of inclusion. And the generations after that, I'd say between like mid 70s through the 80s and the 90s, they saw that you had these black people who went through the channels, adopted, white people's, codes of conduct and behavior, and was trying to gain favor with white folks. And at the end of the day, white folks gave them their ass to kiss. It's the same thing with the black people who came back from World War I. And notice, 1917, I believe World War I ends, and then from 1919 to 1921, you had some of the worst race riots in America. And why did you have these race riots? Think about it. Here you got a group of black men who are sanctioned by one group of white men to go off to war to fight another group of white men, the Germans. And whether you want to talk about, the Harlem Hellfighters or whatever black African Americans were over there, fighting. Let's say you were before 1917, right? White man, you walking down the street and everything, and it's like the color purple, and white boy, who you looking at? Don't you see a white man walking, and the black guy's got to step in the street, right? Oh yes, master sir. Oh, I'm so sorry. He's backing up, cowering in the corner. And the white man standing there with his chest out, feeling, yes, I am superior to this nigger, right? And then you got black men, young black men, who went to Europe and fought, right? Blood, sweat, and tears. Lost, fellow soldiers, both black and white. Killed 5 Germans, right? Not just from a distance, but up close and personal with their bayonets on their not M1 Garands. What did they have? Did they have M1 Garands in World War I? What did they have in World War I? Probably a Lee Enfield rifle, right? 1903, I think it's 1903 Lee Enfield rifle. But anyway, you're talking up close and personal, in the trenches, they get into another trench and they're going at it, killing white men, okay? Watching, the blood, come out of them and everything else like that. Bodies surrounded by bodies. You had the one black guy who called a mortar strike on himself, who was, surrounded by Germans. I don't know if that was World War I or World War II. I think the guy's name was Fox. It might have been World War. No, I think it might have been World War I. Maybe it was World War II. I don't know. But I'm saying you had men over there making sacrifices, just like the white men were making sacrifices. And when it came to like the French, for example, the French treated African Americans, way better than the white Americans did. You even had, black men, they would go to bars and, they were dancing with white women and just in the clubs, because they were like, hey, these are the people who are saving us. Like, we're not here to treat them like shit. Plus, they don't have that whole history of slavery and Jim Crow and all that other stuff, right? And there are stories of African American men being killed, because they were, dancing with white women, and the American soldiers would find out and then kill them. And then, just like with, a lot of these police shootings, it's just, something happened and he just ended up dead, right? There's actually a documentary. There's a couple documentaries. I'll put it in the description box, where they explain that. But that was actually World War II. But this type of stuff went on during World War I. And so, here you have this group of black men. They come back to America, and here we are, right? 1920. And, you just, came back from war or whatever, right? You done killed a bunch of Germans. And then here comes that white man again. Boy, don't you see me walking? How dare you look a white man in the eye? How inclined do you think that black man who just fought for his country, how kindly do you think he would take to something like that? It's almost the same thing as what you see with Marines when they get into it with police officers. Nobody wants to talk about that. Because police officers, their ego gets into it, and then the Marines like, wait a minute, like, you're just a cop. Like, I did 3 tours in Afghanistan. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and you're not going to cut me a break, or you're coming off on me a certain way. And so, like, if you talk to some Marines about their interaction with cops and Marines don't get along as well as, some might believe. Okay? You got, again, fighting soldiers and civil servants, right? or public servants, whatever you want to call it. And so, it's like when people want to talk about like, the summer of 1919 in Chicago, right? This black kid, he was on a raft, and there was a white side of the beach and a black side of the beach. Well, the kid, I guess he fell asleep on the raft, and this raft sailed over to the white side. There was a white guy on the bridge. He threw a rock at the black kid, hit the black kid in the head. The black kid fell off the raft, drowned. The black people went to the police officer and said, arrest that man. Did you see what he did? The white police officer said he wasn't going to do anything, and the black people bum rushed the police officer. And the white people saw that, and then they was like, oh, they're attacking our officers. And then it was just like whole race riot. And then it just spread the whole city. The newspaper was publishing, the niggers have gone crazy, and they went in and into the black, communities, and went into where blacks were working and just started just beating and fighting and killing black folks. Okay? And so, again, you're talking about World War I had just ended. These are people who served their country. And yet, white people still give them their ass to kiss. And I'm saying, again, black people have fought in every major conflict this nation has ever had. From the Revolutionary War to the Civil War to the Buffalo Riders, fighting the Native Americans who had done nothing to African Americans, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, right? The first Gulf War, the second Gulf War, Operation Desert Storm, Operation Desert Shield, the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, right? And at the end of the day, white people as a collective, and again, if you think I'm lying, oh, you're just making shit up. Go to any YouTube video that has anything to do with race or any interaction between white people and black people, especially on the more conservative sites, and read the comment section. Full of white people that, I'm saying, just imagine, you're a black person, you done served in the military. Black people are disproportionately in the military just as much as they're disproportionately in prison. But that never seems to come up, right? So you mean to tell me that the people who are disproportionately locked up in this country, and they're only 14% of the population, are disproportionately members of active duty and the reserves? And we all know who goes and serves in the military: poor folk, poor blacks, poor whites, and poor Hispanics. You don't see anybody's senator's son up there in the military. And if you do, they're not going to be on the front lines doing combat. It was the same thing in Vietnam. Put the black guy on the front. Let him be point man, right? That's where the term fragging comes from. Fragging was a term that came about because you had black soldiers who were killing their superior officers, right? Because you had guys, they come out of West Point or whatever. Yeah, we're gonna take Hamburger Hill. We're gonna take this hill. Just green as all can be. What do they call them? Butter bars, right? Yeah, we're gonna take this hill, and they lose 5 guys, right? Or make the black men disproportionately the point man. You know what I mean? At that point, you should look at the number. I think there was something. It's like an insane number. I think it was like 600 cases, 600 to 800 cases of fragging during the whole course of Vietnam. I'm pretty sure it's 600 to 800. I think I went online and I looked at, because I didn't know that the term actually had to do with African Americans killing their superior officers. Not to say that any whites killed their superior officers, but if you really think about who would really have a bone to pick, back in the racist 60s and the racist 70s and whatnot, it would have been black men, who were over there serving, didn't even want to be there, just like none of the white guys wanted to be there. But they, it's like, oh yeah, we're going to make the black guys cannon fodder, right? And so, it's like, eventually people get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And the newer generation, I'd say my generation and younger, it's like, we recognize that there's no way to win the game. There's no way to gain white people's respect. White people as a collective are not going to view black people as their equals. White people as a collective are not going to, help elevate black people out of poverty. The fact of the matter remains is, and I've seen Jared Taylor use this term, the world is tribal. People are tribal. And so, again, the younger people, like, there's a difference between actually being lazy and not wanting to participate because you recognize that there is no reward. A lot of white people look over that. Once you recognize that there is no reward, once you recognize there is no light at the end of the tunnel, the motivation to participate, literally disappears. Literally disappears. And then this is where you get the black people who will go off and, have more militant views and everything. And they, are going to protest more. And, like the situation, with Colin Kaepernick, taking a knee and all that other stuff, talking about the police brutality. Right. It's like, I mean, literally, like, when you look at these comments sections of videos where, like, black people, there's a questionable homicide between, a black person and a police officer, and, the black man was unarmed, or, and even in situations where, like, they got this guy in California who was killed recently, and they got, part of it on tape, the camera's kind of blurry and everything. And there's a video, the woman, like, she blatantly lies. Oh, and he tried to hit the officers, and he threw the car in reverse, then threw it forward, and, hit another officer, and they dumped 30 rounds into the car. When you look at the video, the guy tried to back up. He didn't accelerate forward. There was no second movement of the car. The cops just unloaded, on the car. And when you look at the comment sections, oh, he didn't do nothing, when around blacks, never relax and everything. And it's like, they said, he was like a suspect of, some sort of auto theft. Maybe he fit the description. Maybe he didn't. For whatever reason, he freaked out. But even still, it's like, the first thing that white people try to do whenever these police situations happen and the police, like, fuck up, is they look for a character assassination. Oh, he was a piece of shit anyway, so what does it matter if we took him out? What does it matter if our police officers took him out? Right? They always immediately look for a character assassination, as though, just because somebody commits some petty crime, that equates to the death penalty. They deserve the death penalty, automatic, no questions asked. Now, granted, I'm like, if you're running away, if you're pointing a gun at a cop or whatever, right, you increase your chances of there being a bad outcome where you might get shot by the police officers. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not ridiculous with it, but there's definitely been, questionable police shootings, and it's like every time the white people, like, they just swoop in and they're like, no, it's the nigger's fault. That's it. That's all there is to it. Case closed. Like, they don't even look at any of the. So, oh, he's a piece of shit anyway. Oh, look, he smoked weed. He got arrested in 2005 for smoking weed. He ain't shit. He deserved to die. That's all that there is, right? And you look at the comment section, and I mean, the venom and the hatred coming from white people, like, you start asking yourself as a black person, you're like, and why do black people serve in the military? Right? It's almost like they come in the room and the whole history of black people even serving this country militaristically is just completely erased. Right? And that's why I've continued to say that when white people ask me, why don't you believe that black people should serve in the military? It's real simple, because white people got short memories. That's why. That's why. And then it's like, when you go to other conversations, right? White people, they love, the Fox News white people. Oh, personal responsibility, nigger. That's what you need. And I remember I got into it with a white guy one time, right? And we were, having this discussion. He said, well, what my father says? My father says. And I hope you don't call me racist. I'm just telling the truth here. And I was like, hey, speak freely. Say what you want to say. I'm not going to get offended. We're having an intellectual conversation here. Well, my father says, you know what the problem with the black community is? And I was like, okay, what's the problem with the black community? The problem with the black community is that you don't take care of your own community. And I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. You're right. We don't take care of our own community. We don't focus on ourselves more. We should start doing that. Okay, yeah. So what we need is we need some black-owned businesses and some black grocery stores and some black trades businesses and stuff like that. Carpenters and electricians and all that other stuff. And black people need to focus on themselves and service their own. He was like, no, 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 no. That is reverse racism. I was like, wait. How the hell is that reverse racism? You just got finished saying black people need to take care of their own and handle their own business. Then when I agree with you and I say, yeah, you're right, black people need to handle their own shit. Then you jump up and when you realize that you're going to be excluded, then now all of a sudden it's racist. So I'm like, okay, so in other words, you want me to handle my own business in my own community, but somehow you're still included or have some sort of freedom of movement, right? In the black community. First off, I'm like, if black people don't even have economic opportunities to offer themselves, like at what point do you think that we would have economic opportunities to the point where we would be able to deny you access to job opportunities within our own community, as if you would even want to work there? Now, granted, if the community was more intact, you probably would want to work there. It would look like a black Chinatown or something like that. And you would, I want to get a job. First off, I think white people's egos are too big to go to black men for employment. Even though, it probably does go on here and there. And a black man, he started a landscaping company. He's got, a white truck driver and the dude is resentful, or whatever. Because that goes on. Because again, we are the barometer for a white man's success. As long as they're ahead of black folks, as long as they're driving a better car than black folks, they feel pretty good about themselves. Because in relation to the elite white people, the people with the, Ivy League degrees and everything else, essentially they ain't shit. So, they feel that way. Right? The guys that never went to school, and the guy's a coal miner, or a guy has some blue collar job, they really have a very strong inferiority complex. And a lot of white folks are not intellectually honest about that with themselves. So, my thing is like, well, let's go back to talking about fixing the black community. I'm like, what does personal responsibility have to do with white folks being included, right? It's like you want me to clean up my own shit, right? You want me to somehow fix the black community without empowering the black community. How is that even possible? How do we enhance the quality of life in the black community so that the kids ain't going to shitty schools, so that we have gainful employment for the men, so that we have more fathers in the home and therefore less boys that lack guidance and lack, whatever you want to call it, a positive male identity or role models and stuff like that? How do we fix all these problems and not empower the black community? And see, this is where I get on, my belief that most white people are full of shit. It's like white people are like an abusive boyfriend that intentionally keeps his girlfriend fat, but then slams her about being fat. And the reason he intentionally keeps her fat is because he doesn't want her to leave him, because he's like, well, if she looks good, she'll leave me. So I got to keep her fat. And the same thing applies with the black community. If the black community becomes empowered, then the black community will be in a position to what? Economically compete with white folks at the collective level. Right? That means that, those, trades workers that are operating in the black community right now, not to say that black people got a whole bunch of disposable income to do home improvement. That's why you don't see Home Depots in black communities. Because the black people who are living in black communities, they're barely scraping by. So there's not going to be any home improvement. There's not going to be any, let's put some granite countertops in and let's put some stainless steel up. You're not going to see any of that. Oh, I'm going to put a deck in my backyard. That doesn't exist, right? So we're going to put in, new sink or one of those, the super showers that you just like stand in and you get sprayed from all sides, right? You're not going to see that. And so again, like example, like they took all of the vocational programs out of inner city schools. Right? They want to talk about all the black kids, they selling drugs, they doing this. And then when you look at the school, there's no fundings for the programs of the school. They took out music class, wood shop, metals, automotive shop, right? So you're not going to see any black mechanics coming out of high school or even guys interested in mechanics because they were never introduced to it, right? You're never going to see any black welders, because they didn't have metals in the school. Metals was taken out of the school. So therefore, they're not interested or because they haven't been introduced, to those fields. At the end of the day, when you're talking about fixing the black community, it's going to cost money. And right now, white folks got all of the resources, disproportionately a bunch of resources. And what white folks do is white folks demand the impossible of black people. They demand that black people somehow fix themselves without having access to the same resources and economic opportunities that white folks have. And that's not going to happen. It's impossible for that to happen. I'm like, where is your math at? You see? Even some of the people, like, I remember, like, Vlad, what's his name? The DJ, the Russian DJ, Vlad. He has a video on YouTube where he was talking to Lord Jared, what's his name? Lord Jared. And he's got another video talking to another black guy. Or actually, no, I don't know if it was Vlad, the other black guy, but there's another video, same thing. You take a little bit of money here and you invest there and blah, 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 blah. And just, it's like totally fucked up math. It's like, you got to have disposable income, which means that you have to have gainful employment in order to, make investments. I get so sick and tired of a lot of the white folks that come through and, they do this sort of, you need to be able to save money you're not even making. How do you save money you're not even making? You see? And the crazy thing is, it's like you have all these problems in the black community, which inevitably spill into the white community. But at the end of the day, like black people's problems that spill into the white community are used by the white elite as a scale. Oh, well, you got to vote this way, or you got to move in this direction, or you got to, don't focus on us and what we're doing with your money and your 401ks and flushing them down the toilet and the way that we're exploiting you and making you a debt. Don't focus on us. No, the problem is the niggers in Chicago. That's your problem. They're causing all of the violence and the homicides and the murders, right? And this was so irritating, right? Is like you got so many white people who look at the situation like, they focus on the symptoms as opposed to the root cause. They focus on the fact that the cancer is causing the person to lose weight and the cachexia, as opposed to focusing on the fact that they have the cancer and removing the cancer. I'm like, they're not going to stop losing weight until you remove the cancer. You see what I'm saying? Like, they'll talk about the homicide rate and all that, and black people, they're just more prone to violence, but completely ignore the conditions in which they're living. Completely ignore the poverty, and then they'll try to argue that, well, the poverty is self-inflicted. Amazing at how, when we go back to right after World War II, the black family was more intact. And I mean, you want to talk like 1945 to 1968 was, black families couldn't have been any more intact. I mean, seriously speaking, because whether you worked in Detroit or Pittsburgh or, Philadelphia, or Baltimore or LA, like you could not, like there was so much work to be done and so many job opportunities that were there. Like, I have a friend whose dad literally, he had a baby on the way, got in his car, drove down, was looking for a job in Detroit, was driving to, I don't know where he was going to find a job. Anyway, there was a long line at the GM factory. He drove past the long line, busted a Huey, parked his car, got out the car, got in the line, and worked there for the next 30 years. Health, full medical and dental, health care, overtime, you name it, was making damn good money. And then, obviously all that disappeared, was able to support a family and do all of that. Okay? Or at least had the resources to do so. It's offensive, and it really shows how much like white people just look at black people as just something alien, something completely different. For a white person to sit there and they know that they need certain things in order to be the men that they need to be. They know it. They know they need X amount of dollars before they have kids, get married, everything else. They know it's going to cost them money. But again, they demand the impossible from black men, and will argue, well, black men need to go and do the same thing without having access to the same resources, jobs, and opportunities. And then what they do is, again, it's in their DNA that they're incapable of doing X, Y, and Z. Or, they love this one, the moral argument. Well, the reason the black community is so fucked up is because they lost the way of following white Jesus. They don't know Christ. That's what the problem is. And see, part of the reason why you have a rise of black atheists in the black community is because black people did all of that. They went to church for decades. Black people are some of the most religious and magical people that there are in America. Black people are far more religious and Christian, especially Southern Baptists, than the vast majority of white people. But see, the younger generation is like, okay, so let me get this right. So you kissed white people's ass. You did everything you were told. You were imitating them in every way that you could to try to be accepted. You embraced Christianity and white Jesus, okay? And you tried to live up to the moral codes and everything else. But the fact of the matter is, you really couldn't, because you didn't have the resources to do so. A man who is an atheist, who is making $100,000 a year, can keep his family more intact than a man who's got Jesus and knows the Bible from front to cover and is only making $25,000 a year. I can guarantee you that. It doesn't have anything to do with God. I already know I offended the Christians. Oh, God. Right? Because they love to sit there and, oh, no, it's about morality. But notice, let white people go without a job. Let all these white Christians lose their job tomorrow. They start freaking the fuck out. They out there protesting because they already know it's about the money. If money's not important, then go tell your pastor that you're not going to tithe anymore. If money's not important, then go take your whole paycheck and go give it to the pastor, right? Or even better yet, leave it to the glory of God, right? You don't need a paycheck, right? You see how retarded and unrealistic that is? But see, again, white folks don't want to admit that. They're scared. They're scared that, if there's like this fear, right? Because, and honestly, I think it comes from this idea, like, if white folks say to themselves, if black people did to white people, I don't want to say this. Yeah, if black people did to white people what white people did to black people, white people would be on some, let's kill these motherfuckers. White people would be on some rampage shit. They know this. So their fear is that if black people ever get themselves into a position of power where they're, over white people, or, slowly, incrementally, they start doing better than white people or whatever, that the blacks would be like, revenge time, right? That's part of the reason why I believe that white people try to keep, black people, at bay. All this stuff about, oh, it's all about merits. It's all about, let the best man win. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. My favorite line is the one from Amos Wilson, where he talks about the illusion of integration, where it's like, let's say that all the black kids in New York got perfect scores on ASATs. They were getting straight A's, and the blacks became like the new Asians. Like overnight, for some reason, even within poverty, black students just started kicking ass all over the place. Straight A's, just beast mode. Okay? And then they were the ones that got the scholarships. They were the ones that went to college and everything else. And they were the smartest and most qualified for the positions. Okay? Now, again, we live in a finite world with finite resources. There's only so much food, only so much water, only so much land, only so many jobs. And right now, white people control the overwhelming vast majority of the jobs. And so if black children suddenly became, the super intellectuals, and they were the most qualified for the job, you would see racism that you didn't think existed or you tried to deny. Because at that point, white people would be forced to show their racism, and they'd be like, well, I don't care what type of degrees you have or how intelligent you are or what your grades were. These jobs is for white folks. Because at the end of the day, what you're talking about is you're talking about the vehicle to survival. That's what you're talking about. And again, there is no way possible for somebody to be fair and equitable and maintain power at the same time. That is impossible. So when people jump up and they try to tell me that it's all about, merit and it's all about, morality and justice and oh, well, if you just work harder and all, that's bullshit. Because if you're trying to maintain power, then that means you are operating in your own self-interest to stay in power because you don't want to be subject to the authority of anybody else. So at that point, when you start talking about a group or a tribe of people or a race of people, they're going to start operating in their own collective best interest. And if that means that they got to tie the other guy's shoelaces at the beginning of the start of the race, so that they make sure that they win and they make sure that they eat, then they're going to do that. You see? That's what it's all about. So I'm like, spare me this bullshit about, oh, it's just about hard work and going out there and doing this. And again, that's not to say that you don't have lazy black folks. You got lazy black folks just like you got lazy white folks. But notice it's always interpreted differently. When black folks was in the 80s and they was on crack cocaine and it was, oh, these niggers, they're lazy. They just want to do drugs all day. Even with the laws that came up, oh, well, if you're on welfare, we got to give you a drug test. Not wanting to argue that people who are on welfare are on drugs as opposed to the fact that people who are on welfare just simply can't find a job to make enough money to pay the damn bills. But again, when we go over to the opioid epidemic, now all of a sudden there's calls for understanding and compassion, and we need treatment centers, and we got to help these white kids, and they're just lost souls, and they need help and assistance, and oh, it's just such an epidemic. It wasn't an epidemic when niggas was dropping like flies. Nobody gave a shit. But yet, black folks, you're American too. You should have compassion for our white children. You didn't have any compassion for our black children. Come on now. And then what's the ultimate when you point that out? Oh, well, if black people cared about black lives, then why are they out there, shooting each other? Or why are they out there, committing abortions, right? They'll start bringing that shit up. Again, ignoring the broken community, the lack of, economic opportunities in that environment. Poverty breeds dysfunction. I don't care what anybody wants to say. If I want to see some fucked up white people, I'm not going to go to Manhattan. I'm not going to go to Silicon Valley. I'm not going to go to Laguna Beach, California. I'm not going to go where white people have money. If I want to see serious dysfunction, I'm going to go to Appalachia. I'm going to go to East Kentucky. That's where I'm going to go. Where everybody's running around and they got a huge hepatitis C epidemic in Appalachia, aside from the opioid epidemic, where people are poor, they are in situations of despair, they are looking for an escape, or they're looking for a different identity. This is what happens with the street culture in the black community. Black people who don't have opportunities coming from the white system, they don't want to be defined by something that they don't have access to. So what do? They create their own, subculture and, standards. So now it's all about charisma and sweet street swag and game and, how many bitches you can get. All this stuff that all a person has to do is, it's like all innate, right? All they got to do is be cool. Right? All they got to do is be funny, be charismatic. All these things are easily, I shouldn't say easily obtainable, but they're more obtainable than the tangible things that white people just define themselves by. This is why you see higher suicide rates in the white community and also in the Indian and brown community, right? Because since it's such a resource-based community, and everything's based and defined off of resources for a man and how much he has and how much he provides and everything else. In the white community, there's a very narrow spectrum of your personal identity. So if a white man can't provide for his family, he ain't shit. If a white man doesn't have a job, he ain't shit. Right? So if a white man, doesn't have certain material possessions, he ain't shit. Right? Where the black community has been in poverty for so long that essentially all that stuff that they didn't have access to, they just threw it out because they're like, fuck it, and we don't have access to it anyway, so it doesn't become that. But then by the same token, you end up with this alternative culture where it's like people still, all that stuff is still being promoted. It's still in the media, it's still on TV, the Mercedes-Benz, Lexus, all that other stuff, and nobody wants to be associated with poverty. So it's like, okay, well, I don't have access to the system. How do I gain those things? Right? And then that's where the drug dealing comes in. Again, thank you, Michael Rupert, for pointing out how the CIA, via the Iran-Contra that, Tom Cruise just made a movie about, was dumping drugs in the black community. You see, but nobody wants to talk about this. Same with Richard Aoki. You can go on YouTube and you pull up videos of Richard Aoki. The FBI armed the Black Panthers. The Mulford Act was a result of the Black Panthers being armed. And they used Richard Aoki, who was a Vietnamese, Vietnamese, person, a protester, okay, activist, that's the word I was looking for. A Vietnamese activist who was used as an informant to arm the Black Panthers, to instigate armed conflict between Black Panthers and the police to shift popular opinion against the Black Panthers. I don't know, y'all say, oh, that didn't happen in our government. White supremacy doesn't exist. It didn't do that. Funny how that didn't happen, even though the evidence is there, the receipts are there, but yet y'all the same ones that jump up and you want to talk about what George Soros is doing, and Sandy Hook is a hoax, and who is what's his name, Robbie Parker, right? The guy who came out smiling and laughing when his daughter was supposed to be dead, and then because he doesn't know the cameras are on, and then when the cameras, then when he gets on the podium, he gets into mode. Go up, look up Robbie Parker. There's enough videos on there about Robbie Parker. Okay. It's not just a conspiracy, right? But I'm saying, it's like you can't conspiracy things to death for your own personal convenience, but then not look at other things that, again, have already been historically exposed. Herbert Hoover and the way that he was investigating Martin Luther King, and they knew that Martin Luther King was cheating on his wife, right? Because they were looking to dig up dirt, the way that they created animosity between certain factions of the Nation of Islam, between Malcolm X and Farrakhan, because Malcolm X found out that Elijah Muhammad was sleeping with underage girls and got him pregnant, right? And so, they started the FBI started putting all these little things out there, which ultimately culminated to Malcolm X's death. And I'm saying these are the people, same with Fred Hampton. Go and watch a Fred Hampton speech on YouTube. Pull up the clips of Fred Hampton and listen to what he's actually saying instead of being dismissive and saying, oh, there's black people that hate Whitey and they want death to Whitey and that's what they're doing, right? What's the other guy's name? Something Carmichael, right? He was the part of the Communist Auto Workers Party. Go listen to that video. Just type in communist auto workers, and the videos in black and white, it'll come up, and he's laying out some shit about the fat cats, the white guys that are rich and wealthy, and their fingernails have never been dirty a day in their life. These bankers and these corporate executives sort of people. You see, again, the evidence, it's all there. And the thing is, it's like, here you have black folks that were actually trying to improve the conditions in the black community, and they were all sabotaged. Whether it was via assassination or they were killed by police, and I'm saying, think about that. So every time a black person, leader, whatever you want to call it, actually tries to fix the black community and get black people out of the situation of despair, takes personal responsibility of their community, they get killed or assassinated. Not only that, it's like, again, are they not taking on personal responsibility? Yeah, white people as a collective have fucked black people up ever since slavery. Absolutely. But these people weren't saying, it's like, you can acknowledge it. Okay, white people did this to us. Okay, that's great. What are we going to do about it to deal with the problem? Because it's not like white people as a collective are just going to stop being racist, right? It's not like they're gonna sit there and through the white guilt, say to themselves, oh, well, let me go and help out these black people at the collective level. Yeah, there's a handful of white people who will be like, that's really fucked up. I see the racist bullshit go on day to day. But again, when that shit comes down to, like, I've had to say this to even white friends of mine. I'm like, let's say you had a boss who was racist. You know what I mean? And he offered you $100,000 job. Most white men are not, and he said, well, I don't want you hanging around with no blacks. Most white guys are not going to turn down that $100 and then run back to their black friend and be like, yeah, I turned it down because, you and I are buddies, and what he just said was just totally fucked up and racist and messed up. That's not going to happen. They're going to keep their mouths shut. They're going to go and be a part of that organization, and they're going to go and get themselves, beautiful white woman and have kids with the white woman and settle down and do all this. The same thing as Boiler Room. When they finally came out and they told that guy that the whole thing was a Ponzi scheme, right? What did they do? They got him in the door. They gave, he had a wife. They encouraged him to get married, had the kids. So now you create this whole lifestyle that's essentially a lie, and then they drop it on you. Yeah, what we're doing is totally fucked up. We're screwing people over left and right. But hey, you could go and you could expose this whole thing and whatnot, but your whole lifestyle is predicated on what you do here, which is illegal, will disappear if you open your mouth. So what you gonna do? And what did the guy in Boiler Room do? He essentially kept his fucking mouth shut. And that's how racism really plays out in the real world. It's not a matter of Ku Klux Klan members running around and neo-Nazis running around saying, oh, we hate niggers and all that other shit. Those are like the stupid white people. Those are like the low IQ individuals and whatnot. Or I shouldn't even be that dismissive, because some of them are intelligent, like Richard Spencer or Jared Taylor. They want to give the white supremacy a new image and whatnot. Neo-Nazism, that white nationalism. They want to give it a new image, right? But the real racism that takes place is one where people aren't going to call out the fucked up shit that they see and say, hey, that wasn't right. That's not fair. And again, it's like capitalism is a competition, period. It's a competition. And the name of the game within capitalism is group economics. Group economics, right? Jewish community looks out for the Jewish community. German community looks out for the German community. Cuban community looks out for the Cuban community. And even though you got like this whole blend of white people, like in America, like people be like, I'm part French and Welsh and German and Italian and Dutch, right? And so like, white just ends up being like this all-encompassing, thing. But, there's subdivisions within that, like Russians, only fuck with Russians. Albanians only fuck with Albanians. They're both white, right? But I'm just saying, it's tribal. The world is tribal, and so, a lot of black people are waking up to the fact, waking up to this reality. Unfortunately, black people drank the Kool-Aid. Unlike other minority groups, we've been here longer than any other minority group. We've fought and died for this country. We've shed blood for this country. So for black people to basically, just give all of that up and be like, nah, fuck that. We're all going to just focus on ourselves. No, there's a lot of black people, even now, they still struggle with the, well, no, I'm an American and this is America. We're all one people and we're all this and that. And there's other black people who recognize that, that's not the way that it plays out. What America sells is not actually what it is. That's the problem. What it sells is not what it actually is. It wants to give the illusion that it's this, racial utopia and, it's the best nation in the world and, all people and all that other stuff here and whatnot. And that's not what it is. And again, as I said earlier in the video, there's a lot of white people who feel severely threatened, by the fact, the birth rates and everything. There's plenty of videos on YouTube because I watch them. I watch all of the white nationalist stuff. I want to know what they're saying and I want to know what they're thinking. And their birth rates are in the trash. That's why they're worried about the Islamization of Europe and whatnot. Because, the Muslim guy, he has 8 kids. The white people have 1 or 2, right? So they're not, they're not surpassing the replacement value, right? Because once you factor in death and infant mortality and everything else like that, just simply having 2, typically your number is going to be below the replacement rate, right? So when they look at the grand scheme of things, this is the main reason why I believe that, all those Bible thumpers that want to talk about abortion and whatnot, especially, the politicians and conservatives, it's not really about the religious part. It's some of that, but it's also about the fact that we got to increase white people's numbers. Otherwise, we're going to be outvoted. If all the minorities voted as one block, against white people, like all the Asians, all the Hispanics, all the blacks, right? It would be either, Democrats keep getting voted in or, whoever they want and white people would, collectively lose power. That's the fear. That's the fear. Okay, this is reasons why, they got the issue with the Mexicans. Oh, we got to protect our borders and then no, the reality is because Hispanics, especially those that, whatever party gives them amnesty are going to vote typically for that party. And so that's a lot of Democratic votes, right? So again, that's what it's about. But as it pertains to black people, I call bullshit on a lot of white folks when it comes to the idea that they want to see black people do better and they want the community to do better and all that other stuff. I call bullshit. I call total bullshit on it because again, black people being empowered means more competition, means the pie is going to be sliced up, multiple ways. Here's what's so stupid about all that. When you it's like you're competition yourselves to death. It's like imagine an intact black community. Granted, on one level there would be less jobs for white folks initially, right? Because you would have black people competing in the market. They had the degrees, they had the education, they had the skills, they had the businesses, right? So now, as opposed to, Kaminsky and Son is right next to Jamal and Son, or insert whatever black name you want to insert. But I'm saying overall, right? You see the contribution that Asian Americans have made to the American economy in terms of science and technology and, things like that. Um, like most of the people who work at the nuclear power plants in America are Asian. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, and just imagine where the technology could advance, or the overall GDP that could be increased if the black kid right now who's 5 years old, as opposed to going off and joining a gang and ending up dead by the time 19, he's in his basement tinkering, working on a damn hard drive, not a hard drive, a warp drive, so that we can travel the stars or whatever. Right? He becomes the future black, George Washington Carver or whoever. But that you're not going to get a whole bunch of that with a whole bunch of black kids coming out of broken, impoverished, fatherless homes in the inner city. And then not only that, you're going to have these problems spill into the white community when, because again, people always say, how come this isn't a hate crime? It's not a hate crime. It's an economic crime most of the time. A black person robbing a white person is an economic crime. If white people disproportionately have more resources and wealth and money and whatnot, again, if a black guy is poor and impoverished disproportionately, then the black people robbing the white people is economic. It's not based on race. Shit, if I was a robber, if I was doing, look at Home Alone, right? Were they driving around the ghetto saying, I wonder which house we're going to rob tonight, right? Sticky bandits, right? No, they were driving in a wealthy white community. They were like, shit, look at these big ass houses, man. I bet you they got some plasma TVs up in that mug. I bet you they got some computers. I'm sure they got a whole bunch of jewelry. Oh man, we're gonna have fun tonight because all these people went on vacation. Oh, they're not home because they have money and resources to what? Go on vacation. You know what I'm saying? You think they're going to drive around in the inner city in a black community, the sticky bandits, and nobody's going to be home? Shit, grandma's probably, sitting there on the dialysis machine and whatnot, because they can't afford, to send her over to, some sort of, what do you call that shit? Retirement home. So she's sitting there in hospice, dying in her own bed, right? Where white folks, they go off and they send their mothers and grandfathers over to, and grandmothers over to, retirement homes. Okay, I know because I seen it. Hell, they even send their special ed kids away to special schools for special ed, autistic kids and whatnot, because they got money. You ain't gonna see a whole bunch of black kids in those sort of special schools and whatnot because they don't have the resources. Unfortunately, when you have black people who have children that are, dysfunctional and whatnot, what ends up happening? They end up on the streets, homeless. Once the parents died, it's pretty much it. And if the parent was already poor, then, again, like they just get dumped out on the street. You have resources, you can deal with that situation, right? Every time you see, white kids, they got Down syndrome and they got some other intellectual disability, they in there working at Chick-fil-A, working at Burger King. Can I help you? Hi, how are you? Right? They find them something. They pull the string, call networks, all that stuff. So it's like, I just call bullshit on the white people to try to act like they really want black people to fix themselves and why can't you be more like us? Because us being more like you at the end of the day, yeah, that's competition, baby. That's competition. In terms of everything, car dealerships, businesses, who owns the sports team, you name it. It's competition, whatever, electrical engineers, carpenters, chimney sweepers, freaking bug exterminators. Again, you talking about, it's so weird how a lot of folks think like that. They just think like, it's like, we want black people to stop being leeches, but we don't want black people to be empowered. We don't want them to be able to compete with us. We want them to accept the position that we've given them and be happy and satisfied. You should be thankful that we didn't leave you in Africa where your people are now. Look at Africa. Africa's all fucked up, right? And they don't want to talk about, neo-colonialism and, the exploitation of resources out of Africa and blood diamonds and minerals, all the stuff's being used in cell phones and African warlords who are being given AK-47s and AR-15s and whatnot. Because again, Africans don't manufacture their own weapons. Where are they getting the guns from? Oh, white folks, they don't want to have that conversation. I mean, where are they getting the guns from? You getting cobalt, you getting platinum and uranium and copper and everything else. I'm like, these people, you make fun of them because they live in mud huts. They don't have money for anything else, right? But yet, bam, brand new, fully automatic AK-47. Bam, brand new, fully automatic AR-15. Where'd they get the hardware from? Where'd they get it from? Somebody white had to give it to them. Because again, there isn't a single manufactured gun in Africa. So where are they getting it from? It's like white folks kill me with that. It's like same thing with the Native Americans. You put the alcohol there, and then you come back in 6 months. And all the Native Americans are alcoholics because they don't have alcohol dehydrogenase like Irish people do. And then you say, oh, see, look, they're all lazy. They're all alcoholics. They're all fucked up. Who gave them the vice in the first place? Native Americans were not sitting around fermenting fruits and shit. They had no knowledge of that. But here you come. Oh, hey, here's some alcohol. Big Bear, here's some alcohol, freaking, eagle feather. Here's some alcohol. Here's some vodka. Yeah, try this shit, freaking smoking Blackfoot. Oh, here, try this, It's like they don't want to own that. And I get it. It's like white people, they get hit with a whole bunch of white guilt, and I didn't do it. I didn't do it. So why are you blaming me? Y'all just need to get over it. Again, I'm going to say like many people said, it's funny how we all need to just get over, what happened to us. But when it comes to, what happens to white folks, Pearl Harbor, never forget. 9/11, never forget, right? They got to remind you every day, oh, we got to have another memorial service for 9/11, right? Black people want to put up a statue, to commemorate slavery or something like that, or bring attention or awareness to slavery. White people lose their minds. Black people want to take down, Confederate monuments, which are a constant reminder to us about that very painful history. And white people are like, no, this is a part of good white history. How dare you? Again, I'm like, you should be less concerned with that and more concerned with creating more black monuments to speak to the service of African Americans who, white people have treated like shit in this country. And yet they still serve. Yet they still go and fight for this country. Right? So we have a very strong love-hate relationship with America and white folks. It's just, we're this, we're like an abused stepchild that's like, yeah, we hate our father. We hate our father because he abuses us. But at the end of the day, that's the only dad I know. That's pretty much, our situation. Some black folks, they more militant than that. Like, fuck America, man. Fuck this place. And you do have African Americans that are going back to Africa right now. They're going to Ghana. They're going to Nigeria. They're like, man, forget all this. They're going to Angola. But not everybody feels that way. Again, you have people who, they got folded flags over their fireplace. Black people have shed entirely too much blood in this country for them to just, walk away, right? Asians can do that, other groups can do that who have not invested. Indians, they can do that. They're not in the military in large numbers. You got to one or two here and there, right? But they didn't have like whole Sikh platoons and whole Chinese platoons, Chinese Americans going off to war and fighting. They didn't have that. I know that they had the what do you call it, the what was it called? What were they called? The Whisperers or something with the Navajo Indians, right? Because the Japanese couldn't understand their language. What were they called? Right? So they've done some movies on that and whatnot. But it's just I mean, this is why you have black people who feel the way that they feel. Plain and simple. Everybody's not on the same page. Everybody's not agree. It's not a giant consensus, and everybody co-signs. But black people have a lot to be upset about with America and white folks as a collective. That's not even debatable. But it's like white folks just kind of come off like this, like they're entitled to something that they're not. Are black people owed in America? Abso-fucking-lutely. Are white people going to give black people anything? Fuck no. Hell no. They're going to run around, we don't owe these niggers nothing, right? I mean, that's what white folks are going to do. Not even a job. Not even an economic opportunity. Hell, I wish black people could give themselves jobs. That way we wouldn't have to go crawling and begging white people for stuff. I mean, that creates a whole another host of problems that we have. Because when we talk about intact black families, intact black community, I mean, you got a situation where a black man has to go to another race of man for his economic opportunity. How the fuck is a black woman supposed to respect a black man when that's his situation and circumstance, and been his situation and circumstance since he landed on this motherfucker in the 1600s? So, that's our dilemma. But anyway, long story short, I hope that answers your question. If you have another question, or you want to make some more, points and whatnot, feel free. Maybe I'll make a video and respond. But I mean, I had to make this video because, I get this a lot, man. It's like, and you got a lot of white folks out here, they don't know how the game is played. I suggest to you to read the book, The Unseen Hand. I believe the author's name is Ralph Epperson or something like that. Yeah, read that book. Go and read that book. And you'll learn something about power. And you'll learn that the real enemy to the working class white man ain't black folks that don't have any power. The real enemy to the white man are other elite white men. Before there was racism, there was classism. And most white men in America have not recognized that fact. So anyway, with that said, that's my video. I'm out.